Hello, I'm Zoe Sadikowski. I'm a senior lecturer in visual communication in the School of Design at UTS. And in this seminar, I'm going to talk to you about the future of publishing and what this means for designers. Let's start with a seemingly simple question. What is a book? A decade ago, I would have confidently replied that a book is a codex, a set of printed pages bound along one edge, protected by a cover. A book is an object that we cradle in our hands to read page by page. A book is a vessel for storytelling, in words or pictures, fact or fiction. A book carries an idea from one person to another. But digital publishing has complicated things. We now distinguish between printed books and e-books. Enhanced e-books contain audio and video elements that demand interaction to navigate a text. Many enhanced e-books don't look or function anything like a traditional book. Are they books or some other narrative form? And does that matter? As a commercial book designer in print, I dismissed e-books until I found the wasteland for iPad in around 2014. This is an app for iPad only, which presents T.S. Eliot's poem, The Wasteland. In the center of this slide, at the top, there's a slide that says a revolutionary poem brought to life for a 21st century audience. I'd like to pause for a second and wonder, what does it mean to be a 21st century audience? In this sense, for this poem, it means that we're able to read something with many layers of information and interactivity on top of it. If you want, you can just read the poem, similar to how you would read it in a book, except on screen. It's just black text on a white background, and you scroll rather than turning pages, but the whole poem is there. Or, as this image shows, you can click on a little menu and up pops a list of different narrators who can read the book to you. T.S. Eliot, from the 1930s to the 1940s, has a distinct change in his voice. His voice becomes much gravelier as he gets older. Ted Hughes, Viggo Mortensen, or Fiona Shaw could be the person who reads the poem to you. And this is significant because when we read poetry versus where we hear it read to us by someone who's an expert or is knowledgeable in the poem, it is a very different experience. There's also a video of Fiona Shaw performing the poem that's shown in the image underneath. You may recognize her from True Blood as one of the truly evil witches, but Fiona Shaw is a fantastic actress, and listening to her perform the poem, walking, using her body language, using her facial expressions is a very different experience than hearing her or anyone else read it, or reading it yourself. In the third column of images, at the top, you can see a messy looking manuscript. This is the manuscript scanned in that T.S. Eliot shared with Ezra Pound. And you can see Ezra Pound's handwritten edits, and you start to understand that the writing process is never solo. It never happens in isolation. You see this conversation between these two famous men play out. And the last image underneath that shows that you can explore the poem's rich allusions with over 35 expert interviews. Some of these are little text fragments, but most of them are videos, interviews with people who are theatre directors, performers, scholars, a whole range of people who've been influenced by the poem or have interpreted it in their own way. So all of a sudden I see that this is a completely different reading experience than we've ever been able to have before, afforded by the technology that we have in our hands and sometimes in our pockets. But where is the line between a book and an app? And I ask again, does it matter? Is an audio book a book or a recording of someone reading a book? If I've listened to an audio book, can I say I have read it? If I have one ebook file, which I can read on my computer, a Kindle, or a smartphone, is that the same book, or three different books depending on the device that I read on? There's certainly three different reading experiences, but I'll come back to the difference between a book and a reading experience shortly. To answer the question what a book is, we have to set material and media boundaries. So how does the materiality of a book affect our reading experience? I asked you if an ebook read on different devices is the same book. But what about different editions of a printed book? What of all the copies of George Orwell's 1984 with different covers? Are these all the same book? Or are they very different things? There are some books there, some covers of some books there that I would like to have on my shelf and some I wouldn't. Would I have the same experience reading that book with a cover I don't like versus a cover I do like? And that's just the cover. When I was in the final stages of writing my doctoral thesis, I opened a book I'd borrowed from my mum, and I saw a note she'd written in the margins. Her handwriting was so familiar that I cried. It was a very stressful time. But that copy of that book is singular. No other copy in the world, and there would be thousands, is the same, but likewise, that reading experience will never happen again. No other copy of that book in the world has my mum's handwriting in it, and never again will I be in that same stressed experience I was in when I felt lonely and isolated, and I opened a book and saw my mum's handwriting in it. I've opened that book since, but I've never cried again. So that moment in time, the exact context in which I was ambushed by my mother's handwriting at a moment of exhaustion and vulnerability, can't happen. So how could we design reading experiences considering that each of us is unique, and not only unique, but that our experience of reading the same book will never be the same twice? So that book and context had a specific effect on me. It moved me in a particular way. To another reader, the handwritten marginalia might be an annoyance. How can we consider those different reading experiences for different people at different times, or the same person at different points in their life? When we mark up dog-ear pages, stick stuff into books, we change them forever. Each reader leaves a trace. Megan Wong finished the visual communication degree honours in 2017, and a series of experiments she did were to document the traces that are left on public library books. Pictured here is an exhibition of her work held at the UTS Library. What you're looking at are microbial traces left on books, bacteria from people's fingers left on the pages of books, which Megan swabbed off the books and grew in petri dishes. Everything leaves a trace. She grew reading cultures in our library, literally living traces of the people who'd borrowed these books, left on the books themselves. Let's step to something less personal and less gross. The way a book is made, the production values, its size and shape, communicate things to us. If I see a paperback novel and a coffee table book, their material qualities tell things to me. The paperback tells me I can throw it in my bag or slip it into a large coat pocket to read on the train or even in the bath. The coffee table book demands a surface, such as a coffee table, to open out and browse through. The form and material qualities of a book afford different reading experiences. Whether a book is hardcover or paperback, the quality of the paper stock, the size and shape are all material qualities that make books bookish. but also communicate to us as readers about the kind of experience we are expected to have with a book. Some of you may be slipping away here thinking that you don't want to be print designers and you don't really care about paper stock or nostalgia for an outdated technology, because a book, like a pencil, is a technology. Others of you may be feeling quite at home. For some of us, books are a comfort object. But here's the part of the lecture where I scare you a little bit and give myself an existential crisis. Let's talk about machine learning. This is not my area of expertise, but here's what I do understand. You could teach a machine how to design book covers that sell better than me as a professional designer with about 15 years experience. In my design process, the first thing I do is find key ideas or themes from a book. An editor could input those ideas or themes into a machine. Then I find or generate images to visually communicate those ideas. A program could instantaneously scour many, many more image libraries and illustrators and image makers than I ever could, using indices of tags related to the ideas or themes. I search image libraries using tags and keywords, but how quickly and how many more of these libraries an algorithm could search is mind-boggling. And as more designers and image makers put their work online, we have access to even more and more interesting images. Finally, or sometimes first, but anyway, I choose a typeface that's appropriate for the genre of the book and works well with the imagery that I'm using. This is a teachable skill. So my entire process of designing a book could be replicated much more quickly and efficiently by teaching an algorithm how to do it. This is actually already happening, only with humans. Platforms such as 99 Designs and Fiverr are services where authors can purchase a passable-looking book cover for about $5. But well-designed algorithms could do this and do it really well. And before you think that I'm turning my nose up at this, which I am a little bit, I have to point out that I make all my websites with Cargo or WordPress. I can't code. I don't know JavaScript or any of the other languages. So I go to a service provider, such as Cargo or WordPress, who have invested a lot of time and money into getting great templates designed for me to drop my work into. It's not that these things aren't designed, but they were designed once really well by good designers, and now the rest of us can use them. There's no reason that that same sort of thinking isn't going to be applied to books. So those in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. But the blunt conclusion to this anecdote is that I graduated from this degree about 15 years ago, and it appears my particular professional expertise is soon to be redundant. And I'm obviously being a bit alarmist. I don't really believe that there won't be book designers. And what I'm leaving out here is the part of the process that I enjoy the most, where I get to talk to the editor and I get to talk to the author sometimes, but I get to talk to other people around me about the book and how we want to market it and how it should be visualized and materialized to make a great reading experience for readers. That might not go away, but it might. But here's the hopeful part. As designers, rather than thinking we are redundant, we may also ask, how might we use our knowledge of book design to imagine and design for future technologies and cultures? What we can learn from the history of designing books can be applied to a range of different kinds of design. Designing anything that has to do with conveying information to readers or audiences. And communicating information is increasingly big business. In Dreaming in Books, Andrew Piper states that the introduction of digital reading devices like the Kindle forces us to rethink the 19th century idea that literature is contained within a book. He asks us to reimagine a literary work as residing not in a single book, but as part of an interrelated bibliographic network. The book is not contained of a finite object. It is part of a larger network. Books have always been part of a network, but they have not themselves been networked. So to explain what I mean by that, let's go back to The Wasteland. The original manuscript, written by T.S. Eliot, would have been materialized as a book by a network of people and processes. Editors, publishers, book designers, printers, booksellers are all part of the network that gets a book from the author to the reader. But the iPad version of The Wasteland is networked in other ways. The poem is extended through a web of video, audio, and visual material that shows how the poem sits within and influences communities of readers, scholars, and performers. We can interact with different versions of the poem. We can listen to different people, and we can start to make connections between them. We take the original manuscript and expand it significantly. So where else is this happening? What else is out there other than an app from 2011? That's what I'm going to address in the second part of this audio lecture.